everyone, and welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann, also called H.
And I'm Ryan Quintal, also called Q.
I was in California this last weekend for my brother's wedding, and I got to go down to Knott's Berry Farm. You used to live in California. Did you ever make it down there?
I've never been, and it's actually funny to hear we were both on literally opposite sides of the country to go to our respective brothers' weddings a couple weeks in a row.
We'll have to share notes and compare our experiences.
Yeah, exactly. Whose brother wore it better?
Well, were you in a wedding party of any kind?
I was. My brother did not elect to have a sort of best man, so all the brothers took on that responsibility.
I see. So everyone gave a speech?
Yeah, actually, no, I was the only one unfortunate enough to have to make a speech. And let me ask you this.
It sounds like you were the best man then.
It does sound like that in retrospect. But did you have to make a speech? Like, what first of all, did you have to make a speech? Is my first question.
No.
Okay. What time did the speech, if any, take place?
Like time, probably. I know that sounds 9 like o'clock.
I'm interrogating you or something.
Not that far. Not far into the evening. Let's see. Wedding started at 4. Speech probably took place near the, I don't know, maybe an hour into the reception. So probably around 6.
That is exactly where I would place a speech. My brother's reception started and they were like, and now a word from the best man. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was expecting to have a little dinner, to look at my notes and rehearse. And I wasn't afforded any of that luxury.
Well, at least you don't have the time to get nervous, which is kind of a kindness to you. And
I suppose so. I didn't really think of it like that. I certainly didn't feel like that in the moment. But in retrospect, I think you could be right.
It's good you have everyone's attention. You know, no one's off having other conversations just yet. Although maybe you want them to be. Maybe you want only half attention during that time.
Yeah, perhaps.
Depends on how good of a speech you had. I'd imagine yours was just fine.
I think it was okay. I wrote it. I wrote it in advance, so I wasn't exactly winging it. But boy, oh boy, I wish I had a little bit more practice under my belt before I delivered it.
Now we are recording Playwright 99. And so we might have to come up with speeches of our own next time around. It's a big 100, God. Crossing into the triple digits.
We dealt with this last year, right? It's so strange. Do you celebrate the 50 and the 100? Do you celebrate the 52 and the 104? Really, it's a conundrum in the podcasting world. Can somebody solve this for us, please?
That's right, because we have not yet missed a week. The 104 is going to be our 2 years, but that's just a few issues after Playwright 100. And so, which of those is more monumentous? I don't know. Maybe we can kind of split it. For 100, please send presents directly to me. And for 104, please send presents to Q.
That sounds so nice.
Be appropriate.
If you also were ever in the mood to do, I know it would be kind of a stunt, but I think the listeners would enjoy it. And listeners, feel free to email us if you would enjoy it. A half inebriated or entirely inebriated episode of the Playwright podcast. I'm sure we would have some really awful half sentences and bad ideas, but I would drink long for a night if it meant spending it recording a show with you.
I have to say, I do oftentimes have a couple of drinks by the time we get to the recording time of the evening. So that might be just about every episode for me.
Oh, damn.
But if we really wanted to kind of go up and above and beyond, I do have to warn, and this is a failing of my own, that my line between buzzed and actively vomiting is precariously thin.
Oh, no.
I don't get drunk. I always kind of maintain a legibility. But my body rejects it before my brain does.
I think one of the things we want to try and strive for is that period that I think every gamer is familiar with, where you are believing you are better at whatever video game you're currently engaged with. So I think that's I know that I have that. I've been playing Mortal Kombat this past week, and I think I would be better with a couple beers under my belt.
Nothing to fine tune that reaction time Maybe your problem is that your reaction time is too fast.
It's too good. Yeah, finally,
the PlayStation
someone
can't
said
register it. So, yeah. There we go. Maybe it'll bring it down to our level.
Love it.
All right, let's get to some video game pitches. I think that in doing the last couple of edits, I think I've accidentally stepped on your toes and have went first when it was your turn because we were in the middle of a refresh of stuff on our podcast feed. And so that's usually where I check to see who goes first. So my bad. You can feel free to take as much time as you need today.
Oh, the stage is mine. What if I just give you a regular pitch?
That'll do.
So my pitch for you this week is a Persona-style game. That's right, I'm pitching a Persona-style game where you're in a school and you're going around and you're talking to classmates and you can develop relationships with them and you kind of find out what types of video games each one of your different classmates could be interested in, maybe different classes and settings, like different areas of study in the school. And as you discover what sort of video games everybody loves, you get to challenge them at those particular video games. And so you get one of these kind of crazy mashup games that has a ton of mini little games inside of it, fighting, RPGs, platforming, puzzles. As you defeat your classmates one by one, you become the gaming king of the school.
All right, and starting the clock. So this is an interesting dynamic. So it's a Persona-style game, which I assume it's not just kind of a frame story to get to these little mini games, which are really the meat of it. I'd like to imagine that this is that the most interesting part of the experience are these social interactions. Is that how you envision it?
Yeah, I like to think that they're like the games can, they obviously should stand alone as being fun events in it of themselves, but if they could also serve a way as to maybe getting certain characters to come out of their shells or admit to something or share with you something they normally wouldn't.
So you said that you're out there to defeat your opponents and rise to the top of the school leaderboard. What if there's another value in losing these matches, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, and fostering friendships that way? Because, the people that are too competitive can really put people off in a social sense.
That's kind of cool. So maybe using winning and losing at the game as a way to sort of shift the moods and build the relationships with certain people, kind of the know when to hold them, know when to fold them sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm wondering how you can kind of build and extend on that a little bit.
So you have a conversation with each member of your friend group beforehand, and you get a sense of their mood, where they are in life, what's going on in their story. And just like Persona, every encounter kind of has a little bit of backstory already inbuilt. I always felt like Persona, like you just kind of showed up and the story just kind of progressed. There were sometimes choices you would have to make, or you'd have to bring somebody the right item or something like that. But for the most part, it was mostly kind of passive, which is necessary because that's a game that operates under a time limit. You only have a certain number of days. And so if you were constantly messing up the social interactions, then you would be kind of even more prevented from experiencing the entirety of those stories than you are under normal circumstances. But in this situation, maybe there's no time limit, maybe there is, but maybe there's alternate ways that these stories can play out based on kind of pivotal moments in the relationship.
That's kind of interesting. So maybe you kind of do a little bit more of a Persona angle and you build in some sort of central mystery or something that the school is working to find out. Maybe there are elements of a game that are factoring into what's happening in the real world and the secrets therein. Like you start these games maybe potentially against the other team or against the other students, and then as you develop relationships, they kind of become more co-op experiences, and you become on a mission in each of these types of games together to figure something out.
Yeah, something like that. So would you see this as being kind of a big open explorable school or arcade or whatever it is? Or would you like it to be more contained in a visual novel style format?
I was thinking that it would be relatively straightforward and more of a sort of Pokemon-esque, not necessarily everybody standing still and you kind of exploring this space, but some semblance of life happening while you are on this mission. But I really like the idea of taking, something like this and making it a little bit more about the relationships that you have. And I'm trying to think about like how a relationship, I pitched a Persona style game, but here I barely played most of the most recent Persona. How do some of those things kind of play out?
Well, it's always just by kind of spending time with the characters in that you have kind of a slot or 2 slots after school, 2 time slots that you can choose to fill with all sorts of large number of activities. Spending time with people is one of them. You'll not every time that you spend time with people, your relationship will progress, which means seeing another story event happen. But it does always kind of like increase this invisible counter. And so once it hits those certain thresholds, so sometimes there will be like 3 times that you hang out and just nothing happens and you're just kind of like leveling up your friendship until the next time that you get together and then another story event happens. But there may be other ways to do that as well. Maybe there's situations where, I don't know, you're at the arcade and you challenge one of your friends and maybe the guy or girl that he likes is there that afternoon and you have to kind of choose do you power through and make them look bad, or do you kind of throw the match and, let him be the big man on campus for that instance?
What I really like about some of that is, what if you kind of had, if there was like an agreed upon popular school MMO of sorts that everybody in the school is playing, and you're having interactions with essentially the same group of people in and outside of that MMO. And part of what's happening there is you're learning about people both in class, kind of in the real world, and outside of that real world. Different people maybe take on different personalities and stuff, and you can kind of, I hate to use the term internet culture, but you can kind of play off of the tropes that we kind of deal with on a day-to-day basis, which is, what does anonymity do to people? What does the ability to role play and personify other things? Maybe you could even create a really safe and interesting space to have a romance that your character normally wouldn't be allowed to have or feel like is relatively forbidden in this world.
It would be very interesting if you didn't know which avatars corresponded with which real people in the real world. The semi-real world in this case.
Quote-unquote real world.
Video game within a video game. And so, as your relationship progresses, maybe at a certain point, they tell you what their screen name is. Maybe you can just kind of like deduce who people are through the way that they interact and some of the things they say. But, I can see a lot of really strong character moments in those reveals. And it'll almost turn into a game of like the Return of the Obra Dinn, where you're kind of using the process of elimination to try to suss out who some of the characters are, getting a sense of their identities that way.
Yeah, that would be really neat, especially to have, the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer, the most recent one, contains a moment where a guy kind of dumps on Peter Parker, but then talks about how cool Spider-Man is, which is a sort of reoccurring joke in the Spider-Man universe of like, Peter Parker's lame and he's kind of bullied at school, but people love Spider-Man. And I love the idea of the school bully not only potentially being a close ally of yours and your team, or you being able to make him a close ally, but something there that allows, I don't know, maybe a potential romance with the school bully. Like how many games let you romance the school bully?
This is interesting. This would be also kind of an interesting direction to go for the like a sequel to Bully, the Rockstar game. Just, I don't know. I guess it's pretty much what we're pitching. It doesn't really matter whether a starting point is Persona or Bully, but, this kind of social simulation that's built upon multiple levels. And as you kind of use these mini games as a way to kind of facilitate conversations and character moments, you start to learn more about the characters both in real life and in the game. That's cool. I like that.
What kind of layer, I know we've kind of addressed some of this at this point, but I feel like we haven't really tickled the multiple games inside of the same universe. I guess we kind of pivoted away from it, but is there anything there that's still kind of interesting?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of visual language that goes into the different genres of video games, whether they are kind of more modern or whether they're very retro style, and maybe that can tell you something about, somebody's interests and ideas of a good time. But I'm not coming up with anything that's, necessarily revolutionary off the top of my head.
Maybe there's an interesting backdrop. One of the things that kind of fascinates me culturally these days is, we have so many of these games as a service happening, and that means these kind of entire, not insignificantly sized, certainly larger than many cities, even in the United States, populations spring up around playing these games, and only to be sort of shut down or pushed away or something. And I wonder, if you can kind of create a kind of a game that the whole school is agreeing to play, and then midway through your playthrough, there's sort of a second game that kind of comes to town and creates that feeling of could you create the Destiny 2 people peeling away to play it on PC, and the PlayStation 4 people feeling like they don't have any people left who are playing it with them?
Well, we're out of time on that one. We have to move on to other games within games potentially. Let's come up with a name, though. What are we going to call this one?
Very cynically, we could call it We Have a Fortnite or something like that. But I kind of love maybe just going with something like After School or something like that.
After School. That works for me. I like that. Maybe with an @ symbol at the beginning.
Yeah.
I know that would be difficult to add to Twitter or anything like that, but it does kind of give that online, offline sensibility.
What I think is cool about that is now you can set the whole thing in grungy internet cafes, and maybe one day you encounter a real classmate going into the same cafe, and that's how you kind of know that they're one of the people that you're playing with.
Very cool. Well, let's move on to my pitch for the day. And what I'm bringing in is, have you played Dangerous Golfing?
I haven't, but I know of it.
Actually, sorry, I got that wrong. It is called Dangerous Golf. This is by Three Fields Entertainment, which is done by ex-Burnout devs. It's an interesting game that's set in these kind of lavish, expensive-looking locations, like the inside of a museum or the inside of a castle's dining room or something, with a lot of expensive and very fragile things. And you basically play a golf ball that can be hit in any direction, and then you can control the way that it bounces around. You can choose to, I don't know what the term is, but you can kind of explode yourself a few times and launch yourself into different directions. And basically your goal is to break as many expensive things as possible in this room. So I'm going to be towing similar ground. I want to say that you control a baseball, and after you are thrown by the pitcher, you can subtly guide it towards the bat, and based on where on the bat that you connect, then it launches you in different directions, whether it's a foul ball or a real home run or whatever. And so it's kind of the reverse of a regular baseball game where it's all about timing the hit. Is that that the hit is going to connect, or at least have the ability to connect at the right time. It's just about where you are able to position yourself on the bat. But as you fly off in any direction, then you can after-touch your way through objects to try to break as many things as possible. The billboard, the faces of the fans, whatever it is. and it's highly dependent on just where on the bat you hit, where it sends you, and maybe there are bonuses and multipliers and things that can send you flying even further along the way outside of the field, into the parking lot or into the building next door, whatever it is. That's my pitch. Let's start it off and see where it takes us.
H, you really have something here. I love this. One of the things that I want to kind of think about is like the events that happen during a baseball play. Like if you are always embodying the ball, I love the idea of you kind of being able to go off on these crazy paths, and as the players run around the field, like struggling to catch you, there's trying to throw you to the next base or something to get you out. I think that could be kind of really sort of fun.
Yeah, I'd like, maybe there are different objectives for each level. And so maybe sometimes you're trying to roll away from the fielders to try to keep them from catching you because your objective is to let the team score. Maybe you are rolling towards the fielder because your objective is just to do damage. And then as you're thrown, then you use your aftertouch to steer away from the glove of the person trying to catch you and maybe break a bone in their leg or something like that with maybe like the X-ray Mortal Kombat vision or something.
Oh my God, can you imagine the great graphic things you'll be able to forget about X-ray mode. You'll be able to really mess some people up. So I love the idea of, in addition to guiding yourself, maybe with the right joystick or something, as I'm thinking about the controls, there's a feeling of controlling what sort of pitch you are.
Okay.
And when you kind of control that pitch, you can be a curveball, or you can be, I know that just essentially is like a boring way of saying what you're going to be, or like turning yourself, of course, is a curve or whatever.
That's interesting because that would give you a different trajectory as you are
spinning
out in different areas. And so depending on, I'd imagine there would be like rings in the air or something that you can do in the air because that's where you're going to spend the majority of the time.
Yeah, I really like the idea of also being able to like somehow like become a fastball mid-flight or something like that in case you need to really like break through a glove of somebody trying to capture you or something like that.
It would be interesting if the left stick is kind of your aftertouch, allowing you to kind of nudge yourself in the air, and the right stick is the rotation that's on the ball. And at any time you can add a rotation which doesn't affect your flight trajectory, but it does affect which way you bounce when you're on the ground.
That's kind of cool. Oh man. So what is the end of one of these rounds? Because like if you're one of these kind of just a sort of ball or whatever, you don't really have much agency at the end of the day. You kind of become your own thing outside of moving yourself around. So like a baseball play ends, if you will.
There could be all sorts of different types of objectives. Maybe your objective is just for one round to hit the mascot. And so you know where in the stand the mascot is. So maybe he's behind the plate. So you need a high foul to get over the whatever that net is in the back, and then guide yourself right onto the mascot. And so it's not necessarily based around the scoring of the baseball game, but it's always kind of based around you accomplishing some sort of external goal.
That's kind of cool. And I love the idea of, and often in these games, it's the players that are so highly modeled, but a game where the crowd can be highly modeled. And when you kind of miss or something, you end up just smashing into a fan's face. And really like that could be the time for like the crazy violence, because then I think we all have enjoyed like a highlight reel at one point or another where you just see a bunch of people really catching their favorite sports team's pitch.
In the crowd, there's special individuals. Maybe some of them could be like Easter eggs or things that you discover kind of throughout the game. And so, yeah, you have almost kind of like in Hitman where every once in a while you'll run across like a named character and it's like, oh, that's somebody who will probably pop up in an escalation mission, or there's a unique costume, and maybe you can even kind of set individual bounties just like in Hitman to target very specific people or a specific section, or maybe you are I don't know, going alongside the kiss cam, and you have to hit each kissing couple.
Yes, yes. Then, right, you get the sort of Burnout-esque, the other thing that's very critical to Burnout, which is the replay. You want a wonderful replay out of each thing. And so, like, after each, well, let's face it, almost attempted assassination, you get the equivalent of getting to watch it back on the Jumbotron and, like, see what you did.
It would be kind of funny to come away with a blooper reel at the end of each season. Kind of like one of my favorite, well, I mean, it wasn't a game that I played it a lot, not because I like hugely enjoyed the gameplay, but I just loved the concept so much, was the Stuntman series. And I liked that at the end of each of those, it used the stunts that you performed and kind of like cut a movie trailer with some additional scenes in between. But then you see it in action and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that happening. And it would just be kind of funny to see these awesome plays that you made kind of recontextualized in like a funny, like mid-90s America's Funniest Home Video style highlight reel of people getting hit in the face or whatever.
And I mean, the fact that you can kind of hear, like, at this point, you can kind of create a sports game that, like, how the team ended up performing is the biggest afterthought of the whole thing. Of like, oh, and by the way, they, went 10-0 or something like that. You're like, oh, I forgot. Like, you could even give it all the set dressing of like your classic sports game of like picking a team and customizing the uniform and like all the sort of fetishization of what it means to like play a sports game, and then just have that be really like almost like you dressed up your environment just to be a platform for you to cause havoc.
I wonder how different stages would work, or whether that would even really be worth programming at all. Whether there's different parks or whether it's just, I don't know, because like parks aren't that different from one another. I mean, maybe they are. Maybe there's different like water fixtures and decorations and stuff. The crowd is kind of the same wherever you go, I assume. But
well, I think like the location of the crowd is interesting, and you provided kind of a good option here, which is the mascots are of different size and maybe have different capabilities, right? They have different gimmicks. So different times during the ball game, they dance to different songs. They all have different dances. Some of them have t-shirt cannons, can kind of fight back. Some of them ride around on stupid like bicycles and stuff. I think that there's kind of cool things you could do with it.
Okay. Yeah. And then, obviously those, I don't know if they do that anymore, but I remember they used to have like targets in the outfield. That would be like, every time that a ball gets hit here, then we donate however much to cancer research or something like that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Well, we're coming up on time here. Let's come up with a name. We'll have to really fish for some puns, from baseball puns, because I'm not an expert, but I'm sure we can come up with something. How about Ground Rule Trouble?
Ground Rule Trouble. Oh my God, that's really good. I was gonna pitch something like 7th Inning Wreck.
Let's see how many of these we can come up with. Just off the top of our head, I'm curious.
Finally,
now.
Something ripe with opportunity.
How about Home Ruin?
Home Ruin is good. In my hometown, we had the giant green wall is called the Green Monster, which is kind of cool. I don't know if there's something to do with that, or is this anything Peanuts and Crasher Jack? He's like, it's something. Good. It's not good, but it's something.
I don't care if my skull gets cracked. Would be the Well, I think we did a good job. Which one is our favorite among those? What do you like?
Ground Rule Trouble is an absolute winner to me.
Right out of the gate then. All right. Cool. Well, that's my pitch for today. Let's go to the community and see what you all have for us this fine day. Let's get another one from Robert Lee, a short one this time, who says, a racing battle game where you're driving food trucks fighting for sales turf. Ah, very interesting. Let's go ahead and start the clock.
Robert, this is so good. And I don't want to read Robert's email address on air, but I will just say it is a also very good email address. A racing battle game where you're driving food trucks, fighting for sales turf. I'm trying to think of immediately what weaponry looks like in this battling game. Am I jumping
When
the
I
gun
hear this,
too
I
quickly?
immediately think about like Twisted Metal, and especially because that had an ice cream truck as like its series mascot,
Totally.
which is a food truck of sorts. And so something that's like very like ludicrous, over the top like that, maybe even like themed on the specific types of food that they sell, in a fun kind of like a Plants vs. Zombies garden warfare kind of way. But the immediate tension that I'm coming against, that I don't know how to resolve, which I hope we can discover together, is that the act of actually selling the food is a stationary activity, whereas battling around, you're going to want to be mobile. And so it seems like those two things can't necessarily coexist unless, one, you are battling to kind of like set up just like territory and then the sales happen off screen, or two, you battle to kind of clear the space around you and then you open for business, which can be toggled on and off almost immediately, and you're trying to sell things, but you're leaving yourself vulnerable because you have to be planted in one place during that time.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I mean, like, I think that there is something, dare I say, From Software-esque about having to plant your feet to perform an attack. And I like the idea of potentially like having a sort of driving game where you can drive around hectically. And we've all kind of played the driving games, or maybe we haven't, but I've certainly played driving games in the past where a lot of it is focused around getting essentially a good enough lead on your opponents or something of that ilk. And I think it would be cool to kind of like just force a stop.
Like I was saying, like while you're selling or during attacks.
Yeah, I mean, maybe those are the same thing, right? You can kind of drive from station to station and try and beat your opponent to locations. But then you kind of have to stop the vehicle to serve, and maybe you also have to stop the vehicle to, say, throw pies or something at your challengers.
If we did want to kind of have to plant ourselves to attack, then I would want that to be, it would make the most sense to me for that to be kind of like a powerful special attack, something that, and then normal combat to take place via crashing into each other or more kind of physical attacks. But if we wanted the projectile combat to be the primary way that these engagements take place, then I think it would make the most sense to be mobile, kind of like a Twisted Metal or a Cell Damage or a Star Wars. What was the one called? Star Wars Demolition.
I get to move around and stuff. Maybe there's classes of vehicles and it's a type of food, right? So you get like the sort of Mexican food truck can do spicy foods, and you get like hot peppers, and it's kind of your flame dealing attack. If you get like desserts, perhaps you can do freezing or cold, or maybe sticky or something like that. That could be cool. Based on like the class of vehicle or whatever, you can skill tree up each vehicle to have different sort of custom attacks that suit your play style.
You know, another interesting aspect to this, and we can come back to the combat stuff later, is that you have to think about the actual flow of customers and the foot traffic.
Right.
And maybe the customers are attracted to the whichever, and customers are kind of abundant enough that when you stop, even if it's shortly, then you can start selling almost immediately. But as there's a higher concentration of customers, those become more desirable spots. So, maybe there's a mini map with a concentration, like a heat map of where the customers are located. And so that turns that, one, into very desirable spots, but two, as a truck is parked, it will attract the people around it. So if somebody else is able to, sneak up and take that spot from them, then they have kind of an install base already of customers that are already right there and ready to eat. And so, it turns that into kind of an even riskier proposition, because if you plant yourself and start selling, then you are kind of increasing the value of that land for everyone else as well.
That's cool. And you actually just got my head thinking about what if you did, like, you can obviously like gain points and you win by defeating your enemies or whatever, but what if you could also, there was sort of civilian casualties as a penalty, and if you get a lot of people crowding around you and you need to speed off to the next location, you either have to like go slow and allow these people to kind of anchor you in place or and kind of get around them, or you can really put the pedal to the metal and, well, let's face it, mow some people down.
So kind of like Carmageddon then.
Yeah, something like that. Just so there's like some feeling of, I don't know if regret is the right word, but punishment for, maybe we've double punished people for staying in the same place at this point, but I still think it would be fun.
I was thinking about that and thinking about how kind of interesting it would be to, as you are racing around and performing this vehicular combat, to have civilian casualties along the way. If you smash into the side of a truck, then you could just kind of like splat and kill their whole customer base, basically reducing the value of that land. So if you're not careful when you destroy your opponent's trucks, then, you could end up killing everyone around there and essentially making it kind of a useless venture for you as well, which is another kind of interesting risk in this high-speed combat, to try to be very careful about things. Otherwise, it gives you another choice. If you are low on health, let's say, and you don't think you could stand up to a outright confrontation, but you can get close, then maybe you could just kind of ride along the sidewalk and mow down everyone that would be buying from another truck in a kind of a last-ditch suicide effort. And, it would be, I don't know, the blood and ketchup and mustard and stuff everywhere. You see, this is like, I was thinking about this, like it makes it more interesting from a gameplay perspective, but it certainly leads to a much more grim type of game.
Well, I think you could do a battle game where there's also some semblance of like just straight up meeting customer demand. Like what if you had something that felt like Overcooked but was competitive rather than cooperative? And once you get into that kind of territory, my head goes into, different customers want different things, and perhaps you can die as quickly as you could or kind of be demolished as quickly as you could in something like a Twisted Metal. But now once you kind of respawn, you get that sort of Battlefield / Call of Duty benefit of being able to reskill up. And so as customers want different foods, only as you die can you kind of like refresh your menu, and you kind of leave the food truck base again. You're like, okay, now I've got this and this, and like those are underserved right now for all the crowds at these areas. So now I've got some menu items that give me an advantage.
Yeah, maybe these are different trucks that are serving the same type of food, and you're kind of like fully loaded on ingredients at the beginning, but as you hit other trucks, then it knocks some of the ingredients out of them. And so you have to keep track of, like, if you're serving burgers, like how many buns do I have, how much lettuce, and how many meat patties. And so it's kind of an automatic process of just like churning out burgers as you are, but you can choose to either like crash into the opponent's trucks, or you can go to several kind of disparate resource stations to try to refill if you're running low on one thing or another.
Okay, cool. Are we going to do just sort of firing? Because I feel like every vehicular combat game, you always just get some version of like miniguns and missiles, and I guess like the equivalent of this is like pies and burritos and that sort of thing. But is there a different twist to do other than like projectile-based combat? Is there something that maybe feels a little bit more battle bots about this? Like, can the ice cream truck like use its giant cone on top of it to get some punches in or something?
I certainly wouldn't mind that at all. I think there's a lot of creative ways to take that, but we're out of time and we have to throw that back to the community and see what they would like to make of this. and it's up to us to come up with a name. I feel like there's something in the food fight area.
For
maybe.
sure.
Food truck fight might be a step too far to really like get the reference.
Feels steals. I would love to have some sort of play off of Meals on Wheels as well.
Or maybe a feud truck.
Feud truck. Oh my God, dude, you're really okay. You're there today. You're on your pun game. Feud truck is very, very good.
All right. It is Feud Truck by Robert Lee. Thank you very much for sending that in. And if you would like to send something in yourself, you can do so by writing in at playwrightcast.com/pitch. You can tweet us at playwrightcast, or you can email us playwrightcast@gmail.com.
Special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song, Hello World, off the album Blue Noise. And special thank you to, two special thank yous, and thank you, of course, to the Kane and Rince Podcast Network, where you can go and listen to wonderful shows like The Sausage Factory, where they interview game developers, Sound of Play. If you just can't get enough of H and Leon, they host that show. And Kane and Rince, the video game review podcast. And if I'm not mistaken, they recently, I think I already said that they had done Pilot Wings, but I picked up Pilot Wings on Super Nintendo. It was gifted to me. So I'm looking very much forward to playing it and listening to the show at the same time.
That's right. Well, they actually referenced us on the Pilot Wings episode.
Oh my God. Now I have to listen.
That's right. All excellent podcasts. And yeah, Q, why don't you take us out of the show today with a quick pitch?
Well, I was listening very carefully to your words, and you actually said something in this episode that stood out to me as a very funny idea. So I want to create a fighting game where a bunch of people are wearing casual shirts and pants and khakis and just kind of slapping each other around lightly in a slightly insulting manner, and call it normal combat.
I like it. All right, well, we'll see you next week.
Bye.